To literally. I'm Anthony Rosenberg, and today we're looking at an expression to cost an arm and a leg. Now, you may have seen it. It's pretty common in English, and basically it means we used when we say something is very expensive. So there's our arm and our leg for you to have an idea of how expensive some things can be. We're going to have a look at the origin and maybe some other things about this expression. All right, so one theory, which I believe has been debunked, is that George Washington sort of came up with this idea that he would be painted without showing his arms and legs because it was more expensive to commission a painter that would paint you with your arms and legs. However, there are actually quite a lot of paintings with George Washington with his arms and legs. And if you see over here, you'll see that there are arms and legs in his painting. Now, there are some other paintings, famous paintings that don't have arms and legs. So is there's some sort of truth to the theory? Possibly, I'm not really sure. You'll see some from Europe and the States, all around the world, really. And of course, there are those who believe that the smaller the body part, or the more hidden the body part, the cheaper the commission painting was. Not sure how true that is. And then of course you've got people who just painted really funny stuff with really simple hands, like Homer over here, who only has 3 or 4 fingers, I think. So that's one way to make things cheaper, possibly. I doubt it. So that theory has been debunked. The more credible theory is that it came from the Civil War in the United States. Just after the Civil War, there was an association called the Association for the Relief of Maimed Soldiers. And if you actually use the acronym there, it'll be A for association, R for relief, M for maimed soldiers, maimed and soldiers with an S. So that's ARMS. Now, that might be a coincidence that it's called ARMS. It was predominant in the southern states where the Confederacy was very big and popular for some time, very short period actually. What happened was, after the war, we had lots and lots of soldiers who lost their arms and legs in the war, and they couldn't work. So this association got together to get together some funds from different landowners and big business people, and with the help of the government, to provide some sort of relief to the soldiers. So as the years progressed on, the law changed a bit from 64 to 67. They sort of said, you know what, we really only have the money for legs, so we'll give you artificial legs, but not arms. Now, there was a lot of uproar over this because not only were soldiers maimed, but people working on farms also had accidents and lost their arms or legs with using equipment, farming equipment. So they sort of said, well, we can't work, so we would like to get some funding for some artificial arms and legs as well. So there was quite a lot of controversy over how the law was going to, and how the government was going to help these people get jobs or get artificial limbs or some sort of help. So it went on for quite a while. In 1970, they eventually included arms. And here's an example over here of the one type of artificial limb. That's an arm with a hook. So you can see it was quite rudimentary in the beginnings, but things developed, and you can see that arms sort of got better, or let's say more realistic, less like a hook and more like a hand. And obviously today they're very modern, but there's an idea of how this expression might have come about, because people would say, to get funding or to get government help, it'll cost you an arm and a leg. You'll have to lose an arm or lose a leg before you get any help from the government or from that association. So that's a more credible theory. Again, not 100% proven that is the origin of the expression, but it seems a bit more plausible. Before this Civil War result, let's say, in fact, in the Long Beach Independent newspaper, there was a foodie, let's say, a food critic, and it was basically that old conservative idea of women in the kitchen and men going to work. So her name was Billa Carney, and she was a writer. She was a food critic, and she wrote recipes and all sorts of ideas of how to cook different dinners and make the happy home. And she actually used the expression in this newspaper. So that's preceding this. So it's the first time that we have it in print. Now the expression was, she said something like, how to prepare a Christmas dinner that won't cost you an arm and a leg. So that was the first time we saw it in print. It wasn't necessarily part of the vernacular as of then. It wasn't something that everybody used, but that's the first registered recording, or the first registered mention of the expression. There is another expression, I give my right arm to do something. So I give my right arm to have that, or I give my right arm to travel abroad, or I give my right arm to know somebody. So that's an expression that could be related. Again, no strong proof of that. In other languages, so in Arabic, they have one that's very, very similar. They say it costs an arm and a foot. They don't go the whole leg. Maybe things are cheaper in that part of the world. But so you can see that there are comparisons with other languages, and Arabic is a much older language than, well, I don't know if I can say a language is older, but it was developed earlier than English as a solid language. So maybe we took it from Arabic in English. The Turkish use a very strange one. They say it'll cost a mother's wedding, or that salesman wants your mother's wedding. Not really sure. I tried to figure out where this was from, how it came about, but I couldn't really get any origins. But I think it's a pretty funny expression. It's your mother's wedding. So I don't know, is it her second wedding or her first wedding? I don't know. I imagine Turkish weddings are quite elaborate, so maybe it's just the idea of being expensive, but I don't know why mother is in there. In Sardinia, they use it's expensive as blood, and that sounds pretty expensive. So Sardinia is an island off the east coast of Italy. So they have that one, which I thought was pretty apt. We've got in Greece, they use the cost. It costs the hair on your head. The don't laugh at me, please. So you can see there we've got the bald scientists. So something was so expensive it cost the hair on your head. Maybe I've been spending too much. French say it'll cost the eyes of the head, or sometimes they say it costs a candy. So they use the word bonbon, which means candy or small chocolate, and it's also slang for a testicle. So they might be saying it costs you a testicle. It's so expensive it costs you a testicle. I'm using the technical word to not use any foul language, but that sounds expensive, you know. And in Portuguese they use the eyes of the face, so similar to French, and they'll also say it cost me a kidney. Yeah, so a lot of references to parts of the body as being very expensive. Here are some examples of how to use the expression, right? So we've got flying first class, so flying in the first class of an airplane, costs an arm and a leg. Now I've highlighted the S because it is the third person singular. So if you're learning English, cost is a tricky verb. Because it's an irregular verb. So flying first class means it costs. So costs is the third person. So I cost, I don't know if whenever you would use that, but I cost, you cost, it costs, or he costs, or she costs. Yeah, so you need that S on the end. It's tricky because you've got an S before the T and an S after the T. So costs, it's almost like a little drum beat. Costs, an arm and a leg. You'll see here I've used it in the past. Now because it's an irregular verb, it doesn't have ed on the end like regular verbs in English, like called or talked. Yeah. So my car cost an arm and a leg. I'm not using the third person, even though my car is it. When I say my car cost, I'm saying it in the past. So a lot of people don't recognize that cost is the past of cost. So for language learners, this is important because if you say it cost, it suggests that you've already bought it, that it's already paid for. So if you are just talking in general, then you need to say it costs. It costs. All right, so be careful with that one. So to finish up today, here's a funny post sign, I guess, that someone has put up on the internet, and I took it down. So it suggests that maybe you could use the words separately, saying, oh, well, it costs an arm. Or you could say maybe it costs a leg if it's a bit more expensive. But no, in fact, we only use the expression as a complete expression. So you need both. So even though there it says that regular petrol or regular gasoline is cheaper than plus unleaded gasoline or super unleaded gasoline, while those things are true, it probably is cheaper. That's not how the expression works. The expression is a complete expression. You have to use both. You can't just say it costs an arm or it cost me an arm. No, you have to say it cost, my car cost an arm and a leg, or flying first class costs an arm and a leg. It's a full, complete expression. All right. Hope that's been helpful. I'm Anthony Rosenberg. See you next time.